Rome calling. Rome calling. This is the Gentleman Ultra. This is the Gentleman Ultra.
L'ultimo ciclone ad abbattersi sul gruppo di Zeman si chiama Inter.
Two Serie A sides meet in the final. It's Inter against Lazio. For the first time, the Uefa Cup final is a one-off game. And Inter are the side who come out on top.
Cross per Nedved, rete. E sono 5. Mancava davvero lui adesso all'appuntamento con il gol nella Lazio. 5-1 per la Lazio, è davvero un trionfo questo di San Siro. La rete di Pavel Nedved e la Lazio va in copertina in questa giornata.
Il suo tiro, dopo la deviazione fortuita ma decisiva di Ceccarini, fissa il 4-2 e regala la qualificazione all'Inter.
Well, enormous pressure here. Loose ball, Peruzzi clears it. Here comes Tankaro. It's 2-2. Unbelievable.
Delma. Oh, they've got the equalising goal in the 92nd minute. Extraordinary. Delma scores only his second goal since his January move from Paris Saint-Germain.
Rotomonti, fischio del finale, la Juventus è campione d'Italia.
La partita dell'Olimpico non è ancora terminata, certo
è finita in questo istante, Di Santis, è finita con il successo della Lazio per 4-2.
Dunque Juve campione d'Italia per il 2002.
È il momento di dare il colpetto, parte Decchi, palla dentro, Matrix, e gol, 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 Matrix!
Penso che oggi è stata la dimostrazione che forse ancora una volta esiste una giustizia divina.
Attenzione Rocchi però in area, Rocchi pallonetto, 2-0 Lazio, ha segnato Rocchi, pallonetto di Rocchi.
Attenzione perché Hernanes si sta inserendo, Hernanes, la chiude il profeta Hernanes, il 2-1 dell'Inter.
Contacto es más que explícito.
El penalti es de Debray.
El penalti es de Debray, ocasión para l'Inter para empatar el partido.
Ci sono i blocchi nell'area di rigore, arriva la palla, la prende Vecino! La prende Vecino! Che segna solo contro le romane, segna il gol del 3-2!
Absolute demolition job from Inter Milan, who win 6-0. 6 different goal scorers. And after only 1 goal in the first half, 5-goal onslaught in the second 45.
Drop in your inbox on our podcast where I have talked about certain goals of the 90s, goals of 2000s, but I am more excited now because Federico Francomani is with me, and this is my most exciting point of the day because we get to talk about subjects that, well, I'm going to ask quite a lot of questions. So first and foremost, Federico, how are you?
Hi Richard, hello everyone.
It's good to have you here. It's good that the podcast is back. We've sometimes struggled. We've tried to help everybody with the podcast and keep it going. But this season, we've got, and I'm going to be nice about Federico because if you've heard the earlier podcast, he is the man behind the editing. So you, sir, have done an extremely good job. But that's not why we've got you on here today, is it? We're going to talk about something completely different, and you can start by, and this is going to be probably something that will happen a lot in this podcast. Listen, guys, I've been trying really hard to learn Italian for the last 4 years. And this episode is about what we call in England twinning, or am I right in saying gemellaggio? Sorry, am I right? Was my pronunciation okay or not great?
Yes, wonderful, well done.
So I'm going to start this podcast because there's no secret of my loyalty, should we say, as a club, and anyone who knows me knows I am Inter through and through. But Federico, for the nature of this podcast, you're going to have to declare your colours, buddy.
Yeah,
despite having worked for 4 seasons for your team, and I've always been a lifelong Lazio supporter, so we need to come out and explain this, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Fede and I first met when we were working on the Inter podcast, for those who don't know, but no, it's great to have you on this, and also as well explain. And I think what we're trying to do in this first podcast is really we want to talk about stuff that maybe people in England don't 100% understand, and I know a lot of people will, but it's an unusual thing. So I'm going to start with something, and I'm going to let you talk about this in a second, Fede, but I'm actually not going Lazio Inter here, but it was going back some time ago, and it was actually a relationship. So gemellaggio is basically when, I would say ultras, am I wrong? Are twinned with each other. So there's a mutual respect between two football clubs in Italy that have had a long-standing history of non-violence, very much appreciation. I think appreciation is probably the better word. But sometimes it's more deep-rooted than we think. And I remember once, not so long ago, that Napoli's Curva penned an open letter announcing the end of their gemellaggio with the Ultras of Genoa, which said, "We confirm the intention to end the rapport of friendship that is seen as tied to the people of Genoa, for circa 40 years. Fede, for our English people who are listening to this, can you go into a little detail of why that statement was so important and why it matters so much to people in Italy?
Yeah, that's a very important point. Obviously, as you said, as the curva and the ultra culture grew throughout the years, this has always been part and parcel of the ultra culture somehow. Maybe not in the 70s, but from the 1980s especially, we started to see more and more gemellaggi, more and more twinnings. Talking to you previously, we were trying to find like parallels in the UK, in the British Isles, which it's very rare. But, it's probably something like between Chelsea, Rangers, Linfield, the Blues Brothers. It used to be maybe Liverpool and Celtic, but I'm unsure about that. So it's really something which doesn't really make sense to a British audience, does it? But at the same time, as you said, because, the ultra culture has always been rooted into the youth movement somehow. You tended to see your ultra mates, your curva mates, your terrace friends, like a bunch of friends. So you basically went to the stadium and forged alliances with, rival, with opposed fan bases. Sometimes there are, reasons to go because of on the field issues, or maybe some nice things happening on the field, which was something which happened to Napoli and Genoa, for instance, in the 1980s. It was directly linked to a sporting episode somehow. In other cases, it used to be maybe politics, because they tended to be both left wing, tended to be both right wing. So they find them together in protests, or street protests or whatever. So they tended to forge friendships. Other times it could be just because we like each other for no particular reason. So recently, this is really blowing my mind. I just gave up understanding the reasons of each gemellaggio, to be honest, but that's ultimately what we're here for, to to dig a bit more deeper into the roots of the Lazio v Inter one, despite it's evidently turned into a rivalry in the last 20 plus years, which you say.
It's crazy, and you made really good points there. And I think that one of the things of people who, I think that the misconception is, I mean, I've been very lucky and privileged to work with Inter and interview people from, players, coaches, whatever, but also interview people from the Ultra and from the Curva. And people have a misconception all the time that, and we don't want to get I don't want this podcast to go into what are ultras, because that's a whole different podcast. But those people are, not always as we'd envisage in the UK as hooligans. They are lawyers, they are bank managers, they are salespeople, they are etc. etc. And it's a very different group of people, and it's quite interesting when you start to delve into it. But when you do delve into it, and I mean, I've been going on the Curva with Inter at the start since. I mean, you've been doing it way before me. I've been going to Inter since 2005. But when you delve into it and you see what happens and the work that goes in, it is a whole different thing. And it's really interesting to me. I mean, we can go, I wish we had longer to delve into the non-violence pacts of the 70s and 80s. Well, what came out the 80s. But realistically, we're here to talk about your team and my team, Lazio and Inter. And realistically, I mean, you can correct me, because you mentioned about shared political beliefs potentially as well. But I mean, Lazio's Irreducibile, the Unbreakables, is that the correct pronunciation?
Yeah.
Irreducibile, pretty much there,
yeah.
I mean, your boys have got like one of the most fearsome reputations on the planet for the way they are. But I'm going to start with something before we go into depth, because we've got lots I want to talk about. But I'm going to talk about personal experience. And you talked very briefly about the fact that the relationship is dying almost. However, 2018, I'd been at the Stadio Olimpico the year before. Not that anyone cares about this. I was out to watching the ATP Tour tennis, and then we'd watched, and Stefan de Vrij helped us out a bit at that time. And then the next season, it was that crucial game where we go into the Champions League. And obviously, from an Inter perspective, we had to go on the Curva Sud, which is like blasphemous for you. But what was interesting?
Not really though. Historically, sorry about this, but historically, Lazio and Roma shared the same end as well, until the 1970s, more or less. But that's another chapter. That's another completely different story.
I did not know that.
They used to be in the same end. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
See, this is why this podcast is going to be fun.
Yeah, that's going to be another episode, of course, but they used to go, hardcore Lazio ultras as well used to attend games in the Curva Sud as well, and then just for derby matches they used to decide to go separate ends, and then Lazio didn't really started to go regularly to Curva Nord until 1979 or 1980. That was start. First game was a Lazio Udinese 0-0, 9th of December. I know it was 9th of December because it's my birthday, so I do remember that very well.
You're like an encyclopedia. So describe it. So this isn't an unreal situation. So for people who are listening to this and thinking, what are these guys on about? I'm going to just paint the picture, and then you can talk about obviously the history of it a bit more than I can, because you've lived it more than I have. So in 2018, my wife and I, we went to watch the game where obviously Inter needed to win to get to the Champions League. It was Spalletti in charge. And it's the famous game with that Vecino, well, famous for Inter anyway, with the Vecino header right at the end. It was a crazy, crazy game. And I remember being on the Curva Sud in the Stadio Olimpico. And as anyone knows, if you're on the Stadio Olimpico and you're just looking out, you're looking at the hills, you're looking at everything else, it's just beautiful. It was summer. It was just fantastic. And everywhere around me, I've been with ultras in Bologna, Florence, Novara, Inter, wherever, right? But it was weird because I was the first time I've experienced this twinning element of it. And I've got Lazio fans next to me. And I'm like, I don't know why, I've always liked Lazio anyway. And I don't know, but that's just weird. Maybe because of Paul Gascoigne or whatever. So I've got like a lot of time for Lazio, as you know. But it's so strange that I've never had such a bunch of hardcore fans on both sides being able to... You wouldn't get it in England. It's impossible in England. Like, everyone was allowed to dispel every bit of emotion, every bit of passion, and no one come into conflict. The guy next to me, right? Freddy, honestly, this guy, he's wearing like camo gear. And the guy is getting so angry, he's getting undressed. He's a Lazio fan, by the way. And he's getting so angry, he's shouting in Italian. My Italian's really poor, as you know. And he's shouting and shouting and this and this. The guy's nearly naked by the end of the game. And I'm looking at him and I'm celebrating when Vecino scores the header and he's crying. And I end up hugging him. And I'm like, this is crazy. Well, you wouldn't get that in England. And so to help me explain to an English audience why that happens, because I wouldn't have that if I was watching, for instance, Inter versus Juve, etc. Inter versus Napoli.
No chance. Yeah. No chance. No, as you said, it felt like a rugby match maybe when, where fan bases are kind of mixed. There's no really separate ends for each other. I mean, there are separate ends, but then obviously you found tickets for the Curva Sud just next to the official visiting supporter section, and that was fine, because it was widely accepted that you can actually mix up with Inter fans. It's just welcoming spirit. It happened to me as well, watching Lazio in Milan in an Inter section recently, probably 2-3 years ago, when Felipe Anderson scored the 1-0 and then Inter won 3-1. But I celebrated and was wearing my Lazio shirt, no problem, surrounded by my former colleagues as well. It was pretty weird with the Curva Nord, Inter's Curva Nord shouting Lazio multiple times. But at the same time, having worked for Inter, having met the average Inter fans, which are not the Inter ultras, so they're different, I noticed that they actually dislike Lazio because of the sporting events, and the same is true for the average Lazio fan who normally dislikes Inter for all the misfortunes, really. From
that point of view, then, so since the 80s, right, the Lazio ultras have maintained a friendship with the Inter's boy San. We know that. And I'm not going to go into the right-wing sympathies. We'll leave that for a different day. Yeah. But in 2010, that relationship it changed before really 2010. And it is strange because would you say, I mean, look, I'm conscious of time as well, but I know you're in Paris for that game, which we can happily talk about because it very much makes me happy. But at the same point, it's strange that it's like I don't know. The ultras seem to be still having that link, but the fan base doesn't. Am I correct?
But at the same time, obviously, 2010, everybody was behind Inter in that game because obviously Inter and Roma were battling it out for the league title. So obviously, despite Lazio fighting off relegation that season, which is mad. But at the same time, everybody knew we had a few easier games ahead, so we really didn't need to beat Inter in that game. I remember because it was in the press box for that game, and I knew the scale of that, globally at least, what was going to happen next. Everybody was going to mock Lazio fans for, basically celebrating their own team's defeat. But at the same time...
Wasn't there a banner saying, if you win, we'll beat you up?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I think Nando Muslera, the keeper, probably didn't get the message right at the very start of the game because, it was making save after save. And then eventually Lazio crumbled. But it was normal because, the way that season was going, obviously Inter was far, way too much superior, to be honest. But at the same time, we just couldn't see Roma win the league, to be honest. It was just unbearable. So, I mean, everybody felt united behind Inter in that game. At the same time, obviously, 2002, I know it's painful for every Inter fan, 5th of May. But, in that case, the team just didn't care about what the fans thought.
Fede, explain to our listeners, right, because I personally don't want to have to go through it again, but I'll let you do it. What happened that day? Because if we talk about Italian football, back in the day, and I'm of a certain vintage where, at the end of the day, Italian teams were synonymous for, playing out 0-0 draws, for instance, if some teams weren't going to get relegated, there was nothing to play for. For instance, if you're 2-0 up at half time, you take your foot off the gas, etc. And we are talking 1990s now. But going back to that horrible 5th of May, I've always heard a rumour that it was Nedved. Was it Nedved who didn't take the message in the half time? But that should have been a game.
It was playing for Juve already that season. It was playing for Juve.
So who was it? Who was it in the?
Probably Poborski. I think it was
Poborski. That's it.
Yeah.
Sorry, thinking of the hair. It was Poborski. Didn't get the message. It was definitely. But what happened that day? Because at the end of the day, this twinning that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Do you think that the decline of the twinning started there?
To be honest with you, on a Lazio perspective, because obviously 5th of May has been, mentioned. I mean, it was mentioned virtually every day when I was working for the club, which is mad because, obviously then Inter went on to bigger things, the triplete, the treble and everything, all the league titles, Champions League final, whatever. But at the same time, that 5th of May just sticks in Inter fans' mind. And obviously it's pretty evident why, because obviously Lazio just gave the title to Juve, of course. But
so just to recap, sorry. So Fede, I'll let you just tell the listeners. Because
we need to remember
we lived it. But what happened that day?
Yeah, basically, so Roma, Juve, and Inter were fighting it off for the league title on the very last day of the season. Roma were playing Torino away. Lazio were playing Inter in Rome. Juve were playing in Udine. So if Juventus didn't beat Udinese and Lazio beat Inter and Roma won at Torino, then Roma would have won the league title, which is, it would have been mad, at the same time, Lazio handling it out, the league title to Roma. It's unthinkable in 2002. I mean, in 2020, these years, imagine back then it was even worse, especially because Roma just won the league title in 2001, ripping it off Lazio shirts after one season. So it was really unbearable to think, they could win it for a second consecutive season, to be honest with you. And then obviously, Juve took the league with Del Piero at Udine after, how long? 2 minutes maybe? So it was possibly clear that at that point it was going to be between Inter and Juve. Even if Roma was going to win in Turin, there was, mathematically it was not going to happen. But at the same time, Lazio players, as you said, didn't really get the message. They still wanted to qualify for Europe for the following season. So they just tried, they just played that game at their full potential in the end. Even if, throughout all the months, getting close to that match. I remember, reading the fanzines, listening to the Ultras radio station all the season. And, the message was clear, we knew. I remember a fanzine where the headline was Obiettivo Photography, 5th of May Obiettivo Photography, which was, target the photographer's pitch side. Don't target the goal. We just don't want you to win. But eventually, Lazio just decided that it was fair to win the game and they wanted to reach Europe. To be honest with you, what is underestimated as well, in my opinion, as a Lazio fan, is 27th of May 2001. So previous season, Inter, because of the Atalanta motorbikes incident, they were playing on neutral ground in Bari, which is mad. So Lazio go to play Inter away on neutral ground in Bari and take the lead and winning 1-0 easily. And then Stefan Delmat comes out with that incredible goal from distance, which was completely useless for Inter because it was a crap season for Inter, wasn't it? Still, it was not going to rescue the season, to be honest. It was just no need. And then, as we know in football, things just, go around. Following season, maybe some of those Lazio players had not really forgotten about that. that's my only explanation about
No,
that.
no, and it's a good explanation. It makes sense because I think we could do like a podcast about literally we started this about Napoli Genoa just having a chat, and we could do this from probably every single club going.
Yeah.
But I think that what's interesting about it is now, and I only want to talk about it. I want to talk about two things. One, we need to talk about Paris. No offense. And secondly, because you were there, so we want to talk about Paris. But secondly, I want to finish up about where Lazio and Inter are now, because even in 2018, even though we've had Paris, we've had 2001, we've had 2000, we had the 5th of May, we've had loads of different things, I still felt that was close. But when I talk to you, you're also thinking it's becoming more distant. And so my question is twofold. We'll talk about Paris in a second, but do you feel that Lazio Inter at this moment in time, as of today, do you feel it is still twinned in that sense, or do you feel it's going more and more distant? And you know this because, I mean, as much as I go to a lot of Inter games, I mean, you're more on the ground in Italy.
Yeah, I mean, I remember reading an article probably 2 or 3 seasons ago from an Italian journalist who said, Lazio Inter is like still talking about the gemellaggio is still something about from the 20th century, because basically it's not something that it's not a modern thing, it just doesn't make sense anymore nowadays. That was the whole point of the article somehow. So I do feel it's still standing because of a group of ultras somehow. Who want to keep it alive, and it happened to me like in October when I was in Como for the Como v Lazio game, and to go to the Como game you need to park in a like away fans parking space which is close to the motorway, okay, and then you stop there, and then they load you on the city buses and take you to the ground. But then, because some of the Lazio ultras were not allowed in, they were just rejected by police. So they just, didn't attend the game. They just, moved back on the buses, drove back to Rome. But some of them actually had the intention to go to Milan and watch the game with their Inter friends at the Barretto, at the San Siro, so their first thought was, why don't we actually watch the game together with our Inter friends, So it's still something that goes along with a personal level, we should say.
It's more of an ultra-based culture than a fan-based culture, really.
Yeah, exactly. But then, it's twofold, as you say, because, if you think about the origins of the clubs, okay, so both clubs really don't really bear the name of the city itself, and their major rivals obviously are the other team of the city which actually bear the name of the city. Okay, so it's AC Milan and Roma, and actually the friendship in the 80s is starting for this, because Milan and Roma ultras were gemellati, would you believe? So basically Lazio and Inter decide to partner up to oppose that friendship. Now obviously Milan and Roma hate each other, they've been hating each other for a few years now, whereas the Inter and Lazio friendship was still on, and they've been friends especially for that reason. So I remember 1991 Uefa Cup final, Roma v Inter, even in Milan for the first leg, there were, Lazio banners and flags to support Inter against Roma, of course. But that was, again, a sporting reason, wasn't it? So Inter basically, okay, if you think about it, it's like a rebel club. Because, part of the Inter members, they're initially part of AC Milan, so they decided to split. Because, as you know, famously, AC Milan didn't want non-Italian players. So Internazionale say, no, we want those players. So, we found our own team, But they just split from them. So I conceive Inter as like a rebel club somehow. Same is true for Lazio in another way. Because, in 1927, when fascist regime come in and say, no, we just need one club in Rome. We're going to merge all the clubs. So Alba Fortitudo, Roman FC and Lazio. But then Lazio said, no, we won't be part of that. We just want to be our own club. We just want to run our own club because of multiple reasons, blah, blah, blah. So Lazio acted similarly, we can say, in that respect. So originally, we can say that they're quite on the same level. And then they are the blue side of their own city as well. So then obviously Inter went on to win lots of trophies, gain global recognition, acknowledgements and everything. Lazio didn't. But we can say that at the inception, at least, of the clubs are very similar. So on that level, I could say that there is still, I can say, affinità in Italian, like affinities, similarities, let's say. But then, yeah, I know you want to talk about Paris, so we move on.
On a serious note, I think the one question I wanted to ask you is one of when I was growing up, the game in Paris. Obviously, I know it's not a great result for you, but for the goal that Ronaldo scores against Marchigani, Zanetti. I mean, for me, Zanetti is like literally everything. But I think the question more about, rather than the game and the result, was how was it then? How did you in Paris, when two teams of such stature go away into playing the Parc des Princes? How was the feeling between fans then? Because that's something I really want to know.
Yeah, I mean, for us, to me, to be honest, it's still, I feel pride about that day, even if we lost. And, the book I wrote as well, for instance, about in Italian, about Lazio, like the 50 most iconic games in Lazio's history. The only defeat is that game, is Lazio v Inter in Paris. Because, I was aware, everybody was really aware that was not going to happen very soon. Obviously, yeah, we played Villa Park Cup Winners' Cup final following season. We played Manchester United in Monaco for the Super Cup. But that was that. So we had the feeling that was really a one-off. So it was an occasion to enjoy. And I remember when we disembarked in Paris as well, we were next to the Louvre Museum, and some Inter fans walking by and hugging us or saying, hello guys, how are you? We have never met them really, and they were like being instant friends. And I was surprised as well about the atmosphere, but how both fan bases mixed up under the Eiffel Tower, along the streets. It was just magnificent, to be honest. Even if the result was very harsh to take, but still, I think the pride of the occasion of being there for us, for Lazio fans, it was just fantastic. It was just worth the occasion, just worth the day, it was worth the trip. And it's when I was working for Inter as well, I was digging into the archives very often, and I remember watching back the whole match. And when Inter were there lifting the cup, you could hear Lazio fans singing it very, very, very strongly, very proudly. Because it was wonderful to be there anyway. So it was a fantastic atmosphere despite the result in the end.
I think it's one of the last. How can I put it? One of the last beautiful finals. I know we've had lots of different Champions League finals and everything else, but when we look at the old world transitioning into the new, I think that was almost the turning point for me personally, and obviously for you to be there is incredible. We've not got a great deal of time left, but I want to ask you, I know it's not,
and it was the first time they actually were playing UEFA Cup in a single venue, wasn't it? So
exactly,
it was always going to be a special occasion anyway. Yeah,
exactly. Just conscious of time, as I keep saying, because but I just want to ask you a question, because I know one thing I just wanted to ask you anyway, because obviously we're going to have a lot of people. Obviously, we're doing this podcast in English. We hope you enjoy what we are doing. We are putting out some podcasts of some of the articles we're doing online, which we'll read out, and we'll have lots of interviews with our writers and lots of different podcasts coming up in the future. So we are going to be very regular, thanks to my good man here, Fede's editing. It hopefully will be a nice experience for you to listen to. But while I've got Fede here, I just want to ask a question that's a little off topic, so it's not always about twinning and ultras and everything else. But for our English audience, growing up in the UK in the early 90s was obviously Italian 90 was huge for a huge part of the generation that changed English culture, changed English views towards football. Italian 90 was, we looked at that from our perspective as almost like, wow, what's this country? It's actually a tournament that shaped my entire life. After that, when Paul Gascoigne joined Lazio, we only had one football match on ITV, and then all of a sudden we got Italian football 24/7. So before the Premier League, I mean, lots of people moved on to the Premier League. I never did, and I've stuck with it. But can you just briefly tell us, was Paul Gascoigne joining Lazio as big for a Lazio supporter as it was for us? Because what it did to us was open our eyes to a country that was, for us, light years away. I know not now potentially, but the stadiums, the players, the football, everything was like blew our minds. But when he went there, and does he still have for Lazio? I think people would be really interested to know, because I think he still has a lasting legacy.
Yes.
Weirdly.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he didn't play that much.
Yeah. I mean, back then, when he was about to join, before he broke up his leg against Nottingham Forest, everybody was really super excited, and Lazio used his signing as well to boost season ticket campaign. And I remember all these banners across Rome and all other cities around which was bearing Io ci credo, I believe in that. So it was feeling like Lazio was going to be ready to fight for the league title, which was a bit too much if you think back about that. But it was so hyped that people actually believed that with just one single player of that stature, Lazio could move on to bigger things, which eventually they did, but that was not going to come before 7 or 8 years later, to be honest. But it was massive, and it's still, if you think about Paul Gascoigne, majority of Lazio fans who lived that period will remember, he's become a cult hero anyway, especially because of the goal in the derby, and then all his lifestyle. Somehow Lazio fans were amazed. Yeah, absolutely, yeah. I mean, all those moments, as you said, were rare, but we kind of enjoyed every single minute it was there. It was fantastic, even where Robbie Williams was attending the derby and Lazio won 2-0. And Gaza was there. I think he was on the bench and then he came on as a substitute. But still, we felt it was like the first world-class signing Lazio was getting, probably the second after Karl-Heinz Riedel, because Karl-Heinz Riedel won the World Cup with Germany at the Olimpico in Rome in 1990, as you know. And then, Gaza came in. So it was probably the second world-class signing Lazio got in their history, to be honest.
In fairness, Thomas Doll did a good job in the meantime for Gascoigne before he was allowed to join. He did quite well, but no, Gascoigne. I mean, obviously the whole program, the whole culture of Italian football in England is built around Gascoigne. There's a brilliant documentary you can still find it on YouTube, and it's when and you'll remember this, when Paul Gascoigne first comes out the plane and he's completely unaware. And all your boys are just going, Paul Gascoigne, la 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 la. Yeah. And it's and he comes out and it's his face. And it's like, wow, what is this? This is Rome. This is Rome. And it's like, and I still get goosebumps watching that now. I'm like, wow. Like the love that the Lazio fans gave Gascoigne was incredible. But we could do another podcast about that. But we are conscious. But fair. I feel like we've only scratched the surface.
I think we need to finish it off with just modern Lazio Inter stuff, which briefly, if you remember, obviously other games when Lazio lost to AC 2022. Inter fans were expecting Lazio to, make Inter a favour somehow, but then lost 1-2, especially with the famous Acerbi Marusic incident in the end. It felt like Lazio were giving out that game, and then eventually AC won the league. But at the same time, you tend to forget Radu in Bologna. That was another major turning point during that season, wasn't it? And then obviously losing 6-0 recently. I've just been in Rome for the derby last month, and I was talking to my friends who still live in Rome. Of course, I don't live in Rome anymore, unfortunately. But we were discussing about the game, and they were blaming Inzaghi for that. And I said, there's no reason why we should blame Inzaghi, because basically he even sent Carlos Augusto on. You can't blame him. No, he should have stopped, but the point is he couldn't have stopped the rot, because if Lazio keep attacking anyway, and they're left exposed, and they're playing with without three of the main central defenders, there's no blaming Inzaghi simply. But now the average Lazio fans think, no, let's blame Inzaghi, it's his fault.
That's a really good point, and I never thought. Do you know what? That didn't even enter my mind at the time, because. And maybe it's an English mentality, because once you start scoring, you score as many as you can possibly do. And people will not probably understand this, because if we go back, like I said before, to the 90s, I remember games against Inter versus Lecce, Juventus versus Lecce. I don't know why Lecce always come up. They tended to be walked over. But, you could dictate a result, couldn't you, at the end of the season almost? Yeah, and I think that people like Italian teams do a 2-0 up, they take the foot off the gas, and people really need to understand that process.
I remember once AC beating Torino 6-0, and it
came
up like a moral debate, like, should they stopped? It feels like morally wrong to beat your opponent.
Do you remember Milan Brescia at the end of the season? I think it was 94.
Mm-hmm.
It was the worst game of football ever. I think only Germany versus Austria in 74 was worse.
Yeah,
they were literally like, and they played for that 0-0. It just suited. It suited. So
no
it's
wonder
really
AC
interesting
Milan
you say
and
that.
Brescia ultras are friends. Maybe that's one of the reasons.
Yeah, well, again, they're going deeper into it. But it's interesting that the fact that even though, so we've come full circle, and the fact of it still matters, because. You're right, actually. That's a really good point that I've not thought about. That maybe I actually understand that Lazio fans in a weird way saying enough was enough, because technically that's how it would have worked in the old days. And
it's exactly. It's like bringing your old mentality into the new world, which is not going to work anyway. So
no,
I know how it feels. Obviously, I that day was terrible. We all know, but I'm not blaming Inzaghi, because what I was saying is still the good it did for Lazio is still outbalancing that result for me.
Yeah.
But it's not for Lazio fans. And then if you think about other players or managers who left bitterly in the last 20 years, I can include, Stankovic, obviously Di Vrij, Roberto Mancini when he left. So there are some, even Pandev when he left, he was not supposed to leave and then he left. But then there are other players who acquired cult hero statuses somehow in both clubs. If you think about, Simeone, of course, Ruben Sosa, Winter, Crespo, Veron, Mihalovic.
Lots.
I mean, well, Vecino nowadays is still, he's played for Lazio and is highly respected anyway by fans, despite, that game. Zarate maybe is not in the same consideration from Inter fans, to be honest. Or like Almeida, Rocchi, all these players like Ballotta, Colonnese, Peruzzi, all these guys, At the same time, recently, if we think about transfers, it's been easier for an Inter fan to appreciate like an ex-Roma player, for instance, Nainggolan moving from Roma to Inter, or Spalletti being coach for both, Juan Jesus, Kolarov, Dzeko, Mkhitaryan, Cassano, Panucci in the past, and how about Mourinho, of course. Obviously now both Inter and Roma fans obviously adore Jose Mourinho. Lazio fans used to love him as well. If you remember that game in 2010, there was a banner from Lazio Ultras saying Mourinho, real man in a fake world of football, kind of that. and he even uploaded the banner. I remember that. But then, when he actually came to Roma and helped Roma secure the first trophy in 14 years, the first ever European trophy, and all the things he did against Lazio, suddenly became
gone.
it's just arch rival. It was everything was gone. But obviously, Inter fans still love him for the treble, for everything he did for the club. So both Inter and Roma fans now are united, in their love for Mourinho. At least when Romelu Lukaku moved to Roma, then the hatred was there, and the San Siro was back again. And then also, let me just add one more thing. Inter took 9 trophies off Roma in their history. So that's always something that Lazio fans are going to be grateful for. I think they should be grateful for. If you think, we mentioned UEFA Cup 91, but then how about league titles in 2008, 2010, the Coppa Italia 2005, 6 and 10.
How many Coppa Italias?
And how about the Super Cup in 2006 where, Inter trailing 3-0 and then winning 4-3 with Luis Figo, in the extra time, or 2008, 2010, the other 2 Super Cups. Lazio on the side have just beaten AC once in 98 for that trophy. Still took 6 trophies off Juventus. So I can say 7 trophies for Lazio off Inter's rivals, but it's 9 for, Inter off Roma. And then that's decisive, to be honest, because if you think, Lazio taking trophies off AC and Juve, doesn't really count as much as Inter taking trophies off Roma, to be honest, in the whole balance of that. Because if I remember when I was a kid, Roma older fans were like making fun of me when I was even 10 or 12 or 13 years old, because, they were saying your cabinet is empty anyway. And nowadays, Lazio Roma won the same number of trophies, which is something which was completely unexpected back then in the 90s, to be honest with you. So we Lazio fans need to be grateful to Inter anyway for that, for those 9 trophies taken off Roma, to be honest.
So I think what we can conclude at the end of this podcast is that whilst maybe the twinning is very much still part of the ultra culture, maybe actually when we think and we dive deep into it, maybe there's more friendship than we think still between Inter and Lazio. And long may it be, just for the benefit of this podcast, if nothing else, Fede. So it's definitely happening on this podcast. So listen, I've loved doing this, and we're going to do a lot more of these podcasts, a lot more. And I'm really happy to do it with you, Fede. If people want to send in suggestions of also what we can talk about, this was one of our starting points. Please, listen, messages, let us know, put in the comments. Also, if you would be so kind to leave a review or a tick or anything, whatever you can do, it always helps in helping us get this podcast out to more people. We'll be doing a lot of different things with this pod, with different writers coming on. Obviously, Fede and I will be pretty much... I just think we talk all the time now. It's just a shame we can't do a 5-hour podcast. But unfortunately, that doesn't sell. So at the end of the day, I'm going to say ciao for now. Fede, thank you so much.
Thank you,
just before
Richard.
I let you go, if people want to find out your work and what you do, where can they hit you up?
Instagram, Federico.Facumeni. It's probably easier, and on X as well, formerly Twitter, Fede Farco. But I know we'll still be in touch in the Gentleman Ultra for other episodes anyway.
100%. Excellent. Well, so from me and Fede, enjoy your evening. It's ciao for now.